The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hey, this is Matt Landry, the voice of Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars The Clone Wars. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars. This is where the fun begins.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 144.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi, I'm Robert King, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies to books to TV shows and more, we're looking at the deeper themes and meanings found in Star Wars. Today, we're discussing The Bad Batch, Episode 3 of Season 2. Joining me today on the panel are Jon Koral.
Hello.
And Joshua Beeghley.
Happy to be here.
Good to have you both. So, as I said, we're talking about Bad Batch Episode 3. The title is The Solitary Clone, and the official description reads, Clones Battle Against a Separatist Holdout. But that's a pretty vague description, I think. Let me try and sum up the episode quickly so we can get into talking about it, because I'm expecting we'll have a lot to discuss. So, what's happening in this episode? The Empire is annexing the formerly separatist planet of Desix. The governor of Desix, Governor Tawani Ames, insists that they are not part of the Empire's jurisdiction and takes the Imperial replacement governor and his squad of stormtroopers hostage. The Empire sends Commander Cody and Crosshair in to rescue the Imperial governor, named Groton. So that's sort of the summary of the episode. And one of the really distinctive features of this episode, I thought, was it's all about Crosshair. I don't think, I looked back through, I don't think we've had an episode of The Bad Batch that's just focused on Crosshair, have we?
Not to my knowledge. Yeah, I don't remember any.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? What this sort of shift in perspective for the episode?
Well, I thought it was good because, I guess listening to the podcast last week of those first two episodes, they were mentioning how, how is the story going to get pushed forward and stuff. And I think now we get a good idea of, okay, well, this is, we're seeing a good, they're doing a good job pushing forward Crosshair story because of the questions that are brought up with this, especially through Commander Cody and then how Rampart does stuff. So I think it's really helping develop maybe where we're going to see Crosshair go, and then as the season progresses.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if they set him as like the main antagonist throughout the entire season, or if he's just sort of going to be this extra story that's also going on throughout the season. I mean, he is part of the Bad Batch still, so obviously I'd still like to hear more about him. Like, I love seeing Crosshair. He's probably my favorite out of the group.
Yeah, he's maybe the most complex character in this show, and I mean, throughout season 1, it was pretty clearly this kind of antagonism between Hunter and Crosshair. And I mean, the other four and Omega, of course, but especially between Hunter and Crosshair, I thought. And I'm expecting that's probably going to be like an overarching subplot of season 2 as well. Maybe the whole series. Yeah, it was interesting because I know the first sort of the opening of it, where you had the Imperial governor coming in and the governor of Desix confronting him. I was expecting the rest of the Bad Batch to come in to the rescue or something like that. And so when it switched to Crosshair's point of view, it was kind of a surprise for me. So we also see Commander Cody coming back in this episode. What do you guys think about Cody?
I was excited seeing him in the trailer, and I was like, yes, we're finally get to see Cody again and see how he's sort of doing after Order 66, because obviously we know what he did in Revenge of the Sith.
Indeed.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting to see that, like, even Cody was having his regrets and still thinking about what he did and questioning the Order. He was sort of alluding to his own personal thoughts through, like, towards Crosshair. It's just being like, oh yeah, the clones are questioning the Order, and like if it was really actually worth doing, kind of thing.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I liked that. I had to look up a little bit more with who Commander Cody was, because I had forgotten that he'd been in the Revenge of the Sith and with Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so it was interesting to see his perspective, but also when he interacted with Crosshair because there was a point where he says, when they talked about some of the clones going AWOL and stuff and having second thoughts, and then he said, like Josh said that, the more clones are questioning the Order, and then Crosshair didn't blink an eye and just said, well, then they're traitors just like the Jedi.
Yeah.
And that kind of, it was interesting. Even from the beginning, you could see, the difference between the two clones there. One, with the Crosshair and Cody.
I definitely got the sense that Cody was sort of testing the waters with Crosshair to see where he stood, and maybe trying to get the sense of, okay, well, the other members of the Bad Batch went AWOL. Why didn't you? What's going on there? And we get that repetition of the line that Crosshair spoke so often in season 1. Good soldiers follow orders. And I almost wonder, it's like, well, why wasn't this episode called Good Soldiers Follow Orders? That would be like the obvious, if I were titling the episode, that's what I would have called it. Maybe that's a little too on the nose, but it seems to be like what this episode is all about.
Yeah, like whether or not you should actually even be following those orders to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, you definitely saw, Cody even said it at the end of the episode. It was like, the difference between like a clone and a droid is that a clone can still think. They still have the rationale of like a normal human being, rather than a droid who's directly following orders regardless of like consequence.
Yeah. Although, we have numerous examples of droids that don't follow orders.
Yeah. Well, I think that the droids have still been funny in this episode.
Yeah.
Like the interrogation scene with the galactic governor. Names are
Groton, yeah.
Yeah, Governor Groton. He's like, I'm in charge here, and the droid's like, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember way back when the Phantom Menace came out and we were introduced to the battle droids for the first time, and I was like, these guys are like being used for comic relief. It's weird. It was like really jarring to me at the time, but seeing how they've been developed through the Clone Wars and a bit in Rebels and now here, it's like, yeah, I appreciate the comedy aspect of the at least the basic level battle droids. Yeah, so talking about making decisions, living with the consequences of your decisions and such, that and whether to follow orders, that kind of just gets us right into the heart of like the big moral dilemma here. And I don't know, we could go on like a macro level of like talking about just war theory or something, and what constitutes a legitimate order and something like that. Or we could just talk about, hey, what when do you respect authority, and when do you sort of buck against authority, and what makes that decision for you? Where would you guys like to go with this conversation?
Well, just one thing I wanted to go back to just a little bit in the beginning of the episode is the difference, or the way that like Rampart looks at the clones versus like Commander Cody, or even how Crosshair looks at it. Because when Rampart calls in Crosshair, it's by his number CT or whatever, 9904, and then that's how he's referring to him, and then he's just nonchalantly looking at his data pad. He's like figuring out okay, this is what you're doing. It's like, so there's no like connection of saying I care about you, or it's like you're a person to me. You're just like another number that I'm sending out, and can you handle it? Good, and answer this question, whatever. Whereas, and then of course later on, when he goes back and he says, "What about Commander Cody?" And Rampart's like, "Who?" It's like at the end, it's like, so you see how the Empire looks at the clones, at least Rampart and some of the stuff versus the clones at the lower level. Crosshair thinks of them as Commander Cody. Cody thinks of them as Crosshair. They all have names and unique individuals, not just the number. And I thought that was pretty interesting to see. And then I just thought that would be good to start with, because then that impacts then later on the decisions they have to make, because of the leadership is showing one view, whereas then Cody is showing a different look when the negotiations happen later on and stuff.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
Yeah, the clones were made for war. They were seen as expendable. They're seen as a number. But the clones are, again, appealing to their own humanity there and are giving themselves names and nicknames or whatever to, again, make them feel like they're more than just like a war tool in a sense, and that they're not expendable.
Well, and, again, this is something that differentiates them from the droids, because the droids are just numbers. Even when droids get nicknames, their nicknames based on their numbers, so like R2 and 3PO and such, it's, so the idea that the Empire just doesn't treat anybody as fully human, maybe, certainly not the clones, and they don't seem to be treating Desix or its population as worthy of respect or dignity. I thought it was interesting the way the governor of Desix consistently put forth this very strong legal argument that we were not a part of the Republic. We were not, and therefore we are not under the Empire's jurisdiction. This is she's saying this is not your business. You don't belong here. And she's advancing this very rational reason for that position, and the Empire is just like, so.
Or even her piece that she wanted, because she was already trying to get up with senators from both the Separatists and the Republic at the time, and to come up with a treaty between the two groups. Like, it seems like they are relatively like a pacifist group kind of thing, where they wanted to see peace and to end the war, but they didn't want it to be like, I guess, a unified government, because they don't want an empire stepping over them.
Yeah, that was an amazing bit of dialogue toward the end, where Cody says, "We're not here to debate politics with you, but that's what this is. This is a political conflict." And I'm blanking out who was it who said war is politics advanced by other means or something like that. I know, somebody wittier than I am. But yeah, I mean, that conversation just brings the question out, well, if you did, you might see how unjust your actions are, she says.
And it is interesting too, I guess, when you see the I guess in the beginning, I guess my question a little bit with it was, when that first shuttle comes in with the governor, they start sounding an alarm. Was that in general because they knew they were going to take this hostile action against it, and they were telling the citizens take cover? You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of like a, and then the second time the Imperials come through with Cody and Commander Cody and Crosshair and stuff, it's like they all take cover again. And then when they open that one door, he's like, we're the good guys, we're here to help. And what I noticed was, what I noticed though too in that scene is Cody put his gun down, pointed it down, Crosshair just kept aiming it in that run. And, obviously you could see the parent and the child frightened and stuff and angry, I guess, too. But
yeah.
It was just, you could see the difference too between Crosshair as a military option, whereas it seems like Cody is trying to not, do what needs to be done for his mission, but not to go overboard and, do it justly, I guess, in a sense.
Well, and I mean, going back to the mission itself, it sounds like Cody definitely sees this as a rescue operation. And it kind of stops there. It's a rescue operation. We're going to get the governor, get him out of there, and leave this behind. Whereas Crosshair seems to at least be open to the idea that no, this is the first step in a full occupation.
Well, even Rampart said earlier, do whatever you need to do or something. It was like that. I forget what he said exactly, but it was something like, what at all costs, do it.
Yeah.
But do whatever he needs to for Governor Garton's release. Yeah, go in as a diplomat, but do it, Yeah, but something along those lines where he was just given, it was kind of like, given leeway on how aggressive he needed to be, I guess.
I don't know. I also thought it was interesting then to see Governor Ames as well start trying to not be aggressive, but already reading into how the Empire was going to go about the mission after they captured the governor. Because she was like, I already know that they're going to be sending people in to kill us, basically. And they were ready to stand their ground.
Yeah, there's this kind of weary resignation in her character, and it's like, this is the first time we've met this character. And obviously it's going to be the last as well because she's dead. But spoiler alert. But yeah, I mean, just the you feel like her situation, and just that sense of I've tried everything and I'm she's kind of at the end of her options, and there's that weary acceptance of I've done everything I can and I can't do any more. And
sort of with that, just that reminded me of whenever she started also speaking of Dooku and how he saw things. And so she was mentioning about how Dooku also saw this sort of advancement of the Empire coming up to take the place of the other two groups that are conflicting. And he obviously didn't know everything that Palpatine was planning. I actually don't really know if he even knew Palpatine was the Chancellor as well. I'm not sure of that right now. But it also made me think about how much his apprentices were able to figure out on their own rather than the Jedi, because it took Dooku becoming an apprentice of him to understand and sort of see a larger plot to overtake everything. And then there was Maul, who also understood that on his own to be able to see that, hey, this was my master's plan finally.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so interesting. Especially because we've been kind of getting a lot of Dooku lately. We had the 3 episodes from Tales of the Jedi, right? And then the first 2 episodes of the Bad Batch this season were on Dooku's homeworld. And so we're kind of getting little glimpses of Dooku that we hadn't known before. And yeah, I like the way you connect that to how Palpatine / Sidious is not really bringing his apprentices fully in the way that maybe certainly that the Jedi do, and maybe not even the way that the Sith had before, that maybe he was doing something radically different even there of using even his apprentices as pawns rather than as full collaborators, I guess.
Yeah, I found that I was wondering about that too, because I mean, I hadn't watched I've watched all the Bad Batch, but not like the clone series and stuff. And and so I haven't seen too much further development of Dooku except for, like the last couple of weeks and, some of the stuff. And it occurred to me, I was thinking, I mean, I remember from, the prequels him talking to Obi-Wan and stuff about not knowing everything and things, but it's just like, I wondered how, how much he was on the side of like the separatist area or planet, and like you said, what he did know about everything, because it kind of surprised me that the way she's saying, oh, this is exactly what he predicted. Well, did he know that it was going to be the Empire just because of, the Emperor, or was it because he was, like Josh was saying, is that he was piecing it together? And I think it's probably more that he was piecing it together, like, but that really hit me earlier on too.
So now I'm just bouncing back to Revenge of the Sith, to the film. And so, Josh, are you thinking that like the moment when Anakin has Dooku at his mercy and Palpatine, tells him to execute Dooku, do you think that's maybe the first time that he realizes who Palpatine is?
Maybe. Well, I understand, like, if you read the books and stuff and other different expanded universe things, you sort of know that they were talking in the room together before they came in, Anakin and Obi-Wan. But I don't know how much he really would have known before that. Like, I just don't know off the top of my head if, like, Dooku also knew he was Palpatine all along and what he was trying to plan there. And that just sort of level of uncertainty, I don't know how much he knew or figured out on his own. But you did mention them being pawns, and I will say that I do know that Maul and Palpatine, or not Dooku, were both pawns in the larger plan, because the end goal was for him to get Anakin, obviously, to turn to the dark side.
Well, maybe getting back to the pawns that are at the center of this episode, Cody and Crosshair, and so here they are. They've got these orders, and they know they're pawns. They both describe themselves as soldiers, right? But they seem to have very different attitudes toward, like, the orders that they receive and how they're being used as pawns. And what do you think about that? They're, when they're moving, and as you were saying, they kind of move very differently. They seem to have different priorities as they're carrying out this operation.
Yeah, I think it was interesting in the sense of, again, Cody took it as, okay, we need to go rescue the governor, get out safe, not have casualties, and Crosshair, like, even whenever, like, their gunship crashed, Cody was like, we already lost, like, half of our men, and then Crosshair is already focused on the mission. He's like, oh, I've done missions with less people, so like, him being so focused in on the mission rather than his surroundings is interesting to see, because it's like, I don't know, Crosshair just sees it as he needs to get the end goal done regardless of the means. And Cody is like, okay, there is civilians here. We need to take that into account as like a basic operation thing for any sort of military. You don't want to obviously like harm civilians. Yeah, and then Crosshair's again just any means necessary to get what he needs in and out.
Yeah, and to Crosshair, the easiest means are shoot people.
Blow stuff up, go through people, do whatever.
Yeah. I do have to say, Crosshair's ability to make trick shots basically is still pretty cool. I mean, the shot where he took out the tactical droid was like, oh, that was just fun. But yeah.
No, I thought that was very interesting too, because it was like Cody didn't even need to know where to throw it. He's just like, just throw it as far as you can.
Yeah,
and he'll just hit it.
Yeah.
Like,
and hit both the battle droids on the way. Yeah.
I also like his equipment and sort of like the technology that they had, because it was just like, I was thinking about it. It was like they shot the one door going in, and then the door opens. Like they just fry the panel, the door's open, and then it closes right behind him. I'm like, that doesn't entirely make sense. And then I don't know. I like his little magnet discs too. Like his little things that he's been shooting.
Yeah, those little pucks.
But like, then I was thinking about it, like the physics of it. It's like, how can you just always be looking at it, and then like the angles of it? I don't know. I was very much questioning that in my mind of how does this optics work of the lenses?
This is Star Wars.
Yeah.
Physics is, let's just say physics are different in the Star Wars universe.
A little bit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, just a little bit. Oh my goodness. I mean, the shot down the barrel of the tank too was delightful, but yeah. I also love the idea that in the Star Wars universe, whatever you need to happen with a door, you can accomplish by shooting the panel. Do you need it to close? Shoot the panel. Do you need it to open? Shoot the panel. Do you need it to stay locked? Shoot the panel.
It's an all-in-one trick.
As you were talking to though about the two, well, the way Commander Cody and Crosshair look at things, and what you put down on some notes here too. It's the, when Crosshair, when you listen to him, you truly believe he understands this comment that we are not the enemy. The Empire seeks to establish peace and order throughout the galaxy. So he's not looking at them as a, as a very hostile group as much as somebody to keep peace and order, which, obviously then he questions after the governor gets let go and stuff. But before that, even what I find was interesting too was the fact that both Tawny Ames and that governor and Commander Cody, when they actually start their own negotiations for the peace, they both take off their helmets, so they're not hiding behind that. They're looking at each other, and then the interesting thing is when, Commander Cody says, well, and then of course Cody puts his gun down too to show that he's not going to do anything. But, we've both lived through one war. Let's not start another. Too many have died already. Resolve with it. We can resolve this without bloodshed. But then he says to her, please do this for your people. And yeah. And so it's like he's trying to, get the situation done. And maybe he's thinking, hey, if we can resolve this peacefully, they can go on peacefully. We'll get we'll get the governor home, safe and sound. And obviously that's not what, Governor Granton has in mind, but it's just, you can see, Cody's idea, I think, is mostly, okay, let's do this with the limited amount of bloodshed. Let's do what's best for everybody in this thing. And let's move forward because, he's gone through a lot. Everybody's gone through a lot with this, the prior wars and stuff. And
he has this deep belief that, it's about establishing peace and order.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a believer in the peace and the order.
Yeah.
And he's trying to convince himself that that's what the Empire really wants.
Right. And then, of course, after she does let the governor go, then you get that, the call and to execute her from him.
Yeah.
And, and then, of course, then Crosshair is the one that comes through with that which, I mean, I guess you could see coming but, that was interesting too, though, because Commander Cody, in the beginning of that scene, when he comes in there and then he puts his guns down on the floor, he waves to Crosshair to lower his, so he doesn't keep holding it as a gun. He lowers it, but he never lets it go. So then at that point, when the governor gave his view or his comment or his command, and Commander Cody didn't do it, then Crosshair is actually doing what the governor's telling him. It's kind of like overriding Commander Cody's authority. I don't know how that was. And then he was just doing what a soldier's supposed to do, I guess, right? But
it almost seemed like he was saving Cody too, because as he started saying it, the governor was like,
"Oh yeah,
if you don't do this, you'll be like put on trial, basically."
Mm-hmm.
Because
face the consequences. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Crosshair immediately shot him before he could even finish that. Just so it almost seems like he was trying to save Cody.
That could be.
Bit.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. I think when I first watched it, I was just seeing Crosshair as impatient. Look, an order's been given. Good soldiers follow orders. Here we go. But yeah, by doing so, he took the choice away from Cody. So Cody didn't have to be charged with disobedience.
Does Crosshair ever do what the other Bad Batchers do with the stun setting? I mean, against other clones, maybe, or is he's always been live rounds, right? Kind of.
I don't remember.
I can't remember
season 1 as well, like every instance, but yeah, I think you might be right. Others,
because like when he would go after the other Bad Batchers, where he was hunting them down, I don't think he was going to stun them. Where I don't know, I'm not sure about that, but definitely when the other 4 are going against clones that are going after them, they always look at them as brothers and say, okay, we're not going to kill them, we're going to do something, we're going to stun them, and so I was just kind of curious, but.
No, Crosshair's definitely always been a shoot to kill kind of person, I think.
Okay. So how do you read the end of the episode? I mean, he's clearly surprised that Cody went AWOL. Or at least he's disappointed that he's disappointed that he's not being paired up with Commander Cody again. But I don't know. I found the tone in that last scene to be kind of ambiguous. The Admiral making that line, I'm not going to get it exactly, but it was something like, funny, isn't it, how all these clones around you keep disappearing? And I'm wondering what is going on in Crosshair's mind. Do you think Crosshair's beginning to reconsider his good soldiers follow orders attitude, or is he kind of getting more deeply ingrained, or I don't know.
I feel like he's either going to hit a point of no return, where even if he is left or not, but I do think he'll still also go under some sort of personal development more, where he will think about it more, because I don't think he's not gonna ignore the fact that Cody left him now right after, and the Empire left him on Camino for 30 days basically.
Yeah.
Before they even found him, kind of thing. And it was you could have ran, but you didn't. Why? And he's like, because he's a soldier and like this is what he's meant to do.
Yeah.
He's probably going to end up staying until something bad happens, but I don't know, it's how he's sort of just become at this point. Is he knows he's a soldier, this is what he's meant to do. He's so embedded into his own calling of that, and it's not going to it'll take something very, very big to change that in him.
Do you think that something big is coming? I mean,
it's the third episode of the season. It's a little too early to tell.
Yeah, but it's season 2. I mean,
I'd like to see something happen where he's going to reconsider it more, or anything really.
I mean, he's such a complex and sympathetic character. Sorry, John, you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say, well, when you looked at him in the beginning, and I meant to rewatch the beginning again, but it was like, because, it kind of felt like, they call him the solitary clone because he's all by himself. He's no longer with his team. And even when he sits down with the other clones, they get up and they move away from him and stuff. And,
welcome to Empire High School.
Yeah. But I was
kind of the principal's office.
But I was trying to, but the thing is though, it's like I was trying to think about it, but like when that second time after he had talked to Cody, after the mission, or the last time he talks to him, and then when he's waking up in the morning, he's just lying in his bed staring at the ceiling before the alarm goes off, and that made me wonder. It's like maybe things are churning, about what Cody said about, are we doing the right thing, as the Empire, or what does it say? We're soldiers. Are we making the galaxy better? He asked. With the new Empire is what Cody asked, and Crosshair says we're soldiers. We do what we need to be done, and then the part about the, what the difference was is they can make their own decisions from battle droids. It's the whole, at that point, I think maybe it does sink into Crosshair a little bit that it's not so much or maybe there is something that could turn him to return back to the regular, away from the Empire and towards the Bad Batch. But the other thing too that I wondered was the surprise too that he had when he talked to Rampart, and he said, I'm not going to Commander Cody, and he's like, who? And because he only knows him as CC 2224, and he's like, because then he says, here's your call sign or whatever, the number, and then he was told before going AWOL and stuff, but that was the whole, he might start seeing him as, as, wait a minute, maybe we aren't that important to the Empire, and stuff. And then way in the beginning, they even mentioned that act they were trying to pass again, the defense
the
recruitment bill to replace the clones. So it's like, I think that was an important thing to add to it, maybe. And then when he sees how he's being treated, and then you hear how Cody, went AWOL after he had his conscience spoke to him, it makes me think that, he's either going to have to go hard in with the Empire regardless, or I'm leaning towards he's going to turn at some point, but it's going to take a while, I think.
Well, and it's interesting. They sent a clone force in initially to rescue the governor, but the governor had TK troopers, stormtroopers, with him, and all of the troopers that came in after that initial attack were TK troopers.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, this is, I don't know, it's a bigger sort of historical moment in the Star Wars universe of phasing out the clones and phasing in the recruited stormtroopers. But what did the Admiral say at one point? It seems clone loyalty isn't as advertised anymore, or something like that. And it's like, so are the recruits, the stormtroopers, why are they so loyal then? The clones were programmed to be loyal, and
But still, that's a programming versus them still being human. So like in the moment, they also, without a hesitation, did Order 66. Well, some hesitated, but I don't want to say Rex didn't hesitate, but then afterwards, now they're sort of contemplating again of everything they did, and it's almost like, I don't know, it's like they're a whole different person for that moment, and then afterwards they're like able to actually think about it again, and they're like, what have I done? And it's almost like, how can they force them to still be a part of the Empire and loyal to the Empire when they make them do something that they're not entirely sure of?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they were able to stay in whatever state they were without having to think back on the event kind of thing, I don't think they would have the issue of them obviously like leaving.
Like if they had the inhibitor chips like constantly turned on.
Yeah.
Or something.
Or like something switches after that so that they're not going to think again about like questioning the Order.
Yeah.
Because they're human. They're going to reflect on like what they've done, hopefully, and see that, hey, this was like a really bad thing to do. What did the Jedi actually even do? We were just told to shoot him without a reason.
I mean, the reason given was that they made an attempt on the Chancellor's life, on Palpatine's life. But yeah, that's I mean, while kind of technically true, it's also not a reason to assassinate every Jedi everywhere.
And also, all of the clones don't know that because they're just told execute this order, and that's all that's repeated on the comm channels.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I mean, I'm thinking as, you know, here you are, you're a soldier in a war situation. You're given an order that you don't understand. How much do you question that order? And I've never been in the military myself, so I don't have direct experience, and I don't know if either of you have military experience.
No.
But just in general, questioning authority is something that should be done. And asking questions as to why are we doing this is a very reasonable thing to do. Understanding it makes it better in general for you, either good or bad. Of at least then you understand, at least to an extent, what's going on. I understand that you may not be told everything, but again, it's like, why do I need to do this? Why do I need to execute this order? Oh, the Jedi, you know, were going towards attempting to kill Palpatine and overthrow him. Okay, that's somewhat reasonable, I guess, kind of thing. Versus just being like, blindly told what to do is not a good way of leading. And you can't just be like, do this because you are sheep kind of thing. Which is ultimately what they try doing with clones. But at that point, they're treating them like droids.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I still see that as also a very big thing of the clones acting as droids versus humans. You definitely see their rationale and them questioning things, which is a very human thing to do, is to understand why things are the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And getting that deeper understanding, again, is what's causing them to then leave, or in Crosshair's case, get closer to the Empire. Because he's seeing it as he needs to step up what he needs to do because this is what he was bred for.
At the same time, he's seeing more and more clearly how little the Empire actually values him. And
he's trying to make his worth still.
Yeah, he's trying to prove himself as valuable. Yeah.
You know, and then I don't know if anybody got this feeling, but like when you're watching him in his cell or his room or whatever you want to call it there, it kind of made me go back to Andor and thinking about the prison, you know, and that he was part of. You know, they all had their individual cells and stuff, and it's like does he really feel like he's part of this team when nobody sits by, and stuff? And then, of course, Cody leaves, or does he feel like he's a prisoner in this kind of, situation of, and he's trying to do what he's being told, but then he's still the solitary clone, by himself, waking up to his alarm every day and, going through the motions that he has to. But I don't know. It's like, that makes me wonder too, if that would help, him change his mind, about where he's going with, is this really what he should be doing? Or is he really just a prisoner in a sense of what he's doing?
Yeah, the soldier is the prisoner, but the prisoner finds community. Yeah. Yeah, speaking of Andor, I found this episode to just be kind of tonally a lot more dark and serious than most of the rest of the Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways kind of mirroring some of the realistic and the maybe not realistic, but kind of the focus on the darker and more bureaucratic and more like, lacking hope, I suppose, aspects of Andor. And I don't know. Did you? I guess my question is, like, do you think maybe there's like some interplay between like developing Andor and the Bad Batch? Do you think this episode shifts the tone of the whole series in some way, or?
I think this episode definitely changes it a little bit in the sense of how we see the Empire functioning still. Obviously, we're seeing it in its very early stages here, but seeing how the direction they are heading and what they are trying to push and go for, it's an interesting development to see. And I definitely understand the sort of darker aspects that you can see, especially with like the lighting and even the planet that they were on.
Mm-hmm.
Was very like red, dark, cloudy planet. And you don't really get a sense of like it being a very happy, hopeful place. It's a very small city, basically, with what seems like people just living in whatever corner they can find.
Yeah, it seems like, I don't know, was it like just mining pits all surrounding the city or something like that? I
wasn't sure what they were doing.
If someone had said, "Oh, this is a picture of, one of the circles of Dante's Inferno" or something, I would have said, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense."
Well, I did think it took a serious check, but then, when I look at it and it said, "Oh, it is TV PG rated and not just like for I think of an animated show more for kids." And, it did take definitely a more serious tone. But then at the end of episode 2, it was Rampart that shot Captain Wilco, too. And, when he heard about it. So it seems like it is taking a darker turn a little bit, or, unless, it's like you're still going to probably have your lighthearted moments and a lot of that kind of stuff and humor worked into it. But I think it's taking a more serious tone, I guess, and on the war part, especially on how it relates to how they treat the clones, right? So,
speaking of the darker things, I thought it was sort of like a horror movie thing whenever they had the droidicas like spinning in the background trying to figure out where they're coming from. And I had my headphones on too, so I'm just like hearing them like rolling behind me. And I'm like, whoa, I can see this as like being like a little horror movie of like the clones trying to fight them. And you just hear stuff rolling around in the background.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
New Star Wars horror movie.
Oh, man. I mean, there are plenty of monsters and creatures and unknown things, and the dark side of the Force is definitely horrific. So I could see a Star Wars horror movie one of these days. That would be, yeah. I like what you pointed out about like the color scheme. Like everything was like red and black and gray on the planet, and then it was like blue and black and gray at the where where Crosshair and the others, where the Admiral was based. I'm not even sure. Was that on Coruscant? Do we know?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But like the only light colored thing in the entire episode was the battle memorial. And it was this like shining gold wall of names, or I'm assuming they were names or registration numbers of fallen clones. That's my guess. I don't read.
I didn't look into what it was, so I'm not. I don't know. I'm very curious though.
And the other thing that really struck me was the music, especially toward the end. But I think throughout, the music had this kind of minor, slightly dissonant, sort of 80s synth feel that really reminded me of Blade Runner. And again, this is like an Andor connection. A lot of people were talking about the aesthetics of Andor, especially the first episode, having this Blade Runner feel to it. And I was getting those vibes. And it was reminding me of, you remember the speech that, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe, from the end of Blade Runner. All these memories will be lost like tears in rain. And I started thinking about the comparisons between the clone troopers and the replicants in Blade Runner, and that sort of similar tragedy. I don't know. I like to think, especially because we've seen other clones like Rex and so on, kind of breaking out of it, that maybe there's more hope for the clone troopers in Star Wars. Blade Runner is a pretty bleak view of things.
Yeah, I definitely want to see the clones sort of have like a higher turn of hope, like rather than in Kenobi where you saw the one just on the street corner, have them actually have a purpose. And also, I did a quick Google search here. The Golden Wall is the Battle of Geonosis Memorial. So, okay. At least that's what I found here on the first link.
Is that like an official source, or is that Wikipedia, or?
It's dorksideoftheforce.com. So I don't know how much to trust it, but
call out to you, Dork Side of the Force.
Yeah. So it says it's from the Battle of Geonosis, which would make sense also for the clones, where that was basically their first calling. So.
Yeah, that's true.
With all their casualties and stuff, sort of seeing them also, I guess that would make more sense than at least the poetry of it, of like them sort of being like at their end versus at the beginning, and like they're still sort of in that dying state, the death at the beginning and death now. I don't know. It's never good with poetry.
Well, as Lucas likes to say, it it rhymes. It's like, so something about it. I mean, I this is something that Star Wars, that Disney has done. I mean, I think they handled the initial kind of reset of canon really badly, but they have been trying to build up a consistent set of canon since they took over Lucasfilm, and I appreciate, especially the details, the depth of knowledge that Dave Filoni puts into a lot of his work. It's impressive, and it adds resonance, I think. Any other thoughts on Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 3?
I'm curious to see what Crosshair's next mission, if we get to see that or not.
Yeah.
Under the other, or whoever he's getting assigned to next. And because it makes you wonder, is like, because you pointed out that with the troopers coming in and the clone force going into, and then the troopers following again, it's like, are they just going to keep sending the clones on these kind of missions and maybe eventually just try to, over time, their numbers will decline because they'll get into these fights or whatever it is, and whereas the troopers are going in just to keep order, whereas, and maybe the clones are going, maybe that's how they thin them out, or I don't know, but I'm just kind of curious to see. And then, of course, what Crosshair, which way he's going to turn, it's like, or develop, I guess.
I'll definitely do that. I'm very interested in, again, the phasing out of the clones and how that's going to happen. And I'd love to see Crosshair still cross paths eventually, which he most likely will, with the rest of his group, and sort of see if maybe he'll join them then and what would happen there. Sort of seeing how they set up that overall arching plot of getting them reunited.
Yeah, my guess is that's inevitable. Right on. Well, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible to create Secrets of Star Wars, including Kenneth P., Ann F., Ashley D., Janet K., and Nancy. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give.
This StarQuest show is brought to you by Tim Shevlin's Personal Fitness Training for Catholics, providing spiritual and physical wellness through personalized nutrition, workout and prayer programs, and daily accountability check-ins. Learn more by visiting fitcatholics.com.
Be sure to subscribe to our show in Apple Podcasts or Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. And to find previous episodes of Secrets of Star Wars and send us some feedback, please visit sqpn.com/Star Wars. You can email us at starwars@sqpn.com or follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on Twitter at SQPN, or join our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. We'll be back next time when we will be discussing The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 4. Until then, Josh, thanks for joining us and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
Thank you for having me.
And John, thank you as well for joining our panel.
Thanks, it was great.
Once again, I'm Robert King. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another podcast on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy: The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/secrets.